Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here and to be at Red Sky again with all of you. Um, I'm going to talk today just for a few minutes about the last year and the state of wildfire, where we are now, and perceptions about my perceptions anyway, about where we need to go in the next year. For me, and I think probably for many sitting in the audience, and I'll just say I have a California bias. I'm a native San Franciscan and love the place that we live. Really, this year is for me, about two big firestorms. The LA wildfires, of course, which we're all going to talk a lot about, but also the Garnet Fire this August. And they represent really two kinds of fire, two parts of the wildfire crisis in my mind that we need to come together on and figure out better solutions for. Of course, this is a picture of Altadena burning. This is not a wildland fire. Maybe it started as a wildland fire, probably was for about 20 minutes, but very quickly became a fire that was houses and gardens burning and not forests. Of course, the Garnet Fire in the Sierra this summer was the archetype of the kind of fire that we're trying to manage landscapes differently in order to avoid. Lost the tea kettle experimental forest in that fire at high intensity, a tremendous loss in the southern Sierra that piles on top of the Creek Fire and the Castle Fire and fires we all know that have been accumulating over the decades. And I'll just say, I want my children to go to the Sierra and hike and climb in the forest, not in the Sierra brush field. And so both of these things, both the community loss in Los Angeles, the impact on people's lives, and the loss of precious natural resources are things that I think everyone in this room can come together on a desire to avoid. And also, and I think it's really important to say this in the current moment, it's something that really crosses party lines, that brings people together. No matter where you come from, who you vote for in an election like today's elections, this is a place and in this room, and the reason that one of the reasons I personally find a lot of satisfaction and reward in working in the wildfire space is that this is an issue that doesn't matter, which letter goes after, which party affiliation you have. We come together around this issue and we try to find solutions collectively, and there's an opportunity to hear and listen and learn from many different perspectives. And I hope today, for all of you, is that experience. So last November, I was lucky enough and honored to be speaking in this room and came away with a 5-year work plan, my concluding slide. And I went back to my slides getting ready for this week to look at what I said last year, because it feels like, last year we'd gone through two very quiet fire seasons leading into November of 2024. The federal workforce was having trouble making their 1,000 hours, right? I mean, there was not enough work because the fire seasons had been so quiet. But luck runs out, and in retrospect, thinking about that moment and saying, hey, we need to pay more attention to wildfire feels a little sad at this point, given what's happened in the last year. And so, but I took a back look at these conclusions, taking care of our people, still important. I'm going to talk about that. Finding ways to improve the productivity of the fire workforce by giving technologies to the people that do the work to help them do their work better and faster is so important. It's still important. Putting fire on the ground, still essential. And then finding ways to create resilient communities by changing public understanding. I'm going to just revisit these themes because I think they remain enduring themes that we need to be focused on in this community. So what about the workforce? Well, the year has been a year of enormous change. The permanent pay fix got done for the federal wildland firefighting workforce. There's also a ton of uncertainty because of all of the foment at the federal level, including the creation of a single firefighting agency. I understand from the rumor mill that that is still moving forward despite the shutdown. But that's a huge execution challenge for the agencies that have to somehow combine their work. But in the long run, I think it will be a really transformative and positive change. At the same time, and I would emphasize this, there's lots of challenges for the federal workforce. Our work is not done. And at least, we've done some analysis about the broader wildland fire workforce. And I would just say, that housing and firefighter health continue to be critical concerns, particularly as we move away from a workforce that is primarily federal and have more and more private contractors in the workforce that are actually out there cutting line on large incidents. We need to be thinking holistically about how a person who begins their career, perhaps as a federal firefighter, perhaps as a contract firefighter, perhaps in a structure fire department, what their whole career pathway looks like to make sure that there's meaningful, safe, healthy work that allows them not just to be successful in their job, but to have a life that creates meaning and satisfaction. I was really struck. A friend, someone I consider a friend, was being interviewed about his career as a very successful person within the CAL FIRE firefighting team. And the interviewer asked, "What are you most proud of?" And he said, "That I'm still married." And I think that says so much about his values and also about the challenges of being a wildland firefighter today. And we need to work on those challenges and not rest on our laurels. Technology. This is a picture of the BurnBot. I call it BurnBot Day at the Dish. The Dish is a hiking path at Stanford University that I like to go run loops on when I have time. We're seeing continued investment in new firms. Notably, just last week, the announcement of the seed round for Seneca. We're also seeing fire tech startups start to mature and face a real challenge, which is crossing the valley of death. And that is particularly challenging in the fire space because of the need to conduct public contracting with fire agencies and be fast in that process. I'm really excited to see the work that's starting to spin up in that area to increase the speed with which new technology can be integrated into fire operations, but that's a continuing piece of work we need to focus on. I'll just say also on technology, I think we need to be very careful here that we don't simply reinforce a suppression bias, because one lesson from Los Angeles and also from Garnet is we need to be thinking about resilience. The left of bang work is as important, and it can be tempting for companies to focus on the right of bang, but we need to keep that focus. In terms of putting fire on the ground, the most recent data we have, and this is in a report we just put out, there'll be a little QR code at the end of my talk, 260,000 acres of prescribed fire in California in 2023. The preliminary data based on the air permits suggests that 2024 we burned less. That's not nearly enough. We are still losing precious resources, and we need to find ways to redouble those efforts, both in terms of easing the path to permitting for burns, training the workforce, and also providing the funding and business models for the workforce to grow in a sustainable way. We're losing too many structures. This is our figure showing structure loss over the last decade. And I'll just say on the wildfire insurance utility space, the only way out is burn fewer houses down. There is no way to finance our way out of these kinds of the problems that we're experiencing, the problems we experienced in Los Angeles, the catastrophe of the LA wildfires. Even as successful as it was, the firefighting agencies in LA caught 10 out of 12 fires before they caused major damage. That is an incredible success. On the other hand, 2 got away, and those 2 probably caused north of $50 billion of structure loss. And it is very hard to imagine a sustainable model for the real estate economy in California where that continues to occur, where we're losing more than 1,000 homes a year every other year. That's basically what this figure shows. We need to do better. Those impacts are having, those losses are having huge impacts on insurance. This just shows our internal data on insurance cost by risk quintile in California. And what you can see is that In the high and extremely high risk areas of California, regular people are suffering because of the cost of insurance. This data is through 2024. I'll tell you the 2025 data does not look better. And the way we bend this curve is by burning down fewer houses. This is a picture that I think is important to show because it starts to talk about like, well, why are we losing so many houses? What is the work we need to do? This is a picture of Mandeville Canyon Avenue in LA County. The little blue signs you see are signs placed by homeowners that are opposing the Zone 0 regulation. Keep your hands off our backyards is what those signs say. Now look at the fuel in this environment and remember that Mandeville Canyon was the place where LA County Fire and all of the cooperating agencies took the stand to keep the Palisades fire from getting into Brentwood and crossing the 405 into Bel Air. So this was a place where a hard firefight had just happened. The people in Mandeville Canyon do not accept the idea that their backyards need to change. And I think this is the enormous challenge that we have to confront, and that we need to think about how we communicate to these homeowners. Changing public understanding is fundamental. This is a picture that probably most people in this room have seen. Most normal people have not seen it. And it's a picture of, what we know is true, that well-prepared homes are much more likely to survive ember attack than poorly prepared homes. Now, I would tell you, when we talk about this picture, we need to think differently about how we speak about it. As a good fire science person, I'll say, well, we need to harden structures and prepare Zone 0 so that homes can survive ember attack. That is not the way people think about their houses. It is not the way they want to think about their houses. I'll just share 3 pictures. This is from a home in Altadena that did not burn down in the fire. Every single structure around it burnt to the ground. And you can see, if you look at this home, it's not perfect, right? But it's got Zone 0 in most places, and it's also got a kid in footy pajamas and a family living a beautiful life in Altadena, right? A family that would entertain in their backyard, where kids run away from bedtime or nap time in their backyard. And I think we need to be, and it is a life of beauty and fun and joy, and also of wealth creation, right? People buy homes, especially in California, if they can afford to, as a way to create and secure their financial future. And we need to start thinking about how we communicate about real estate in a different way. I think we need to talk about how we need to help people to understand about learning to live with fire. Too many people still in California believe that they can avoid having fire, that fire can be kept at a distance, when the reality is that the wildlands in California will burn. That is what they do. That is what they have always done. The Native Americans for thousands of years helped that process along and stewarded the land, but that is what the land will do. We need to help people find ways, and this is through architects and landscape architects and fancy magazines that have pictures of what those people do, to have fire-resilient homes that are beautiful and valuable and places where you want to have a mojito in the backyard with your friends. We need to change people's vision of what the forest looks like when it hasn't seen fire. I have learned from our tribal partners to see the forest in a different way. When I walk into a forest that's been fire excluded now, I think it looks like a mess. I see a forest that needs fire to be clean, to be well tended. But almost no one I talk to where I live in Marin County thinks that way. That is a public understanding and a public communication challenge that we need to confront if we are going to win this fight. And I guess I'll just close by saying I want to tell more resilience stories. I want to celebrate success when it happens. And there are places. In the line and bridge fires in 2024, there was success. In the recent fire up in Oregon called the Park Fire, 850 structures were threatened. They lost 5. We need to start talking about these wins so that people understand the value of making change in their lives on that street in Mandeville Canyon. I'll just close by saying that my team, which is amazing, have just put together a report on California wildfire in 2025. Here's a QR code for it. Please download it. Please provide feedback. This is something we're going to do again. We're trying to provide a data-driven set of metrics for both the outcomes that we care about and also the inputs that we think matter. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. It's an honor to speak with you.